Now close your eyes and think of a happy place.
You are about to experience the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Plaw, at Andrew Plaw Tech, always here to connect with the PowerShell community. And this week, I'm actually at a conference, so I took a couple weeks off. Of course, we're delivering great episodes every Monday, even in my absence, because, we plan ahead a little bit. So hope you enjoyed the most recent John Hammond episode. But this week, I'm actually back at work, and I'm on site in Seattle at TechMentor with some friends here, actually, at dinner. We like these bar sessions whenever I'm on site. So I've got a few friends here, but I'm going to get started off with Greg Altman. But before that, I want to tell you about a very exciting event coming up. And that is PowerShell Saturday. So it's in Raleigh. PowerShell Saturday is a day-long conference focused on all things PowerShell. Whether you're an experienced PowerShell professional or a newcomer, our event promises a day filled with learning, networking, and motivation. Our roster of speakers comprises community members like you and well-known experts in the industry who will share their valuable insights with our audience. If you're passionate about PowerShell, then this is the event to you. And you know what? You may even see yours truly there. I think it's a fantastic event. I love the SQL Saturdays, the PowerShell Saturdays. If they're in your area, make a point to attend, even if you have to pay your own way, because it's pretty darn cheap. Well, let's get started with this interview, man, because I got Greg Altman, my friend from PowerShell Summit this year. I don't know if that was your first year there. I think that was the first year I saw you there.
I think it was my second or third year. First year in decade or more.
Okay. So you went before I went.
Well, James keeps throwing it on the same week as my wedding anniversary, and my wife says no to conferences, yes to anniversaries, and I say yes to being married.
Yep.
So
that's fair.
Well, we've adjusted that, right, James?
You've moved it. Oh, that's why they moved it earlier.
Exactly.
For you, man.
Exactly.
Well, and that's why we saw you there.
That's all for me.
But we're here at TechMentor, and this is a conference you've been attending for a while, right?
Yes, since like 2013, 2014.
Wow, that's quite a while. It's my first year attending. PDQ is a sponsor, so fortunately I
Welcome.
got a free ticket to check it out.
Right on.
I've heard great things for a while, and I got my review so far, unbiased. It's pretty great. It's one of my, I'd say, top 3 conferences so far. I really enjoy the size. I really like the people we're connecting with. I found a lot of people who are interested in PowerShell, kind of beginners, but like actually ready for the journey ahead, which it gets me fired up as a PowerShell lover like yourself. But you're actually speaking this year. So what are you going to be speaking about? What have you spoken about? What's on the agenda for you?
Well, so this year, unfortunately, I'm not really speaking about PowerShell, but it's a lot of infrastructure management, infrastructure optimization. I did a session earlier today on moving off of Dropbox onto SharePoint Online. And then I did one on how to optimize your IT infrastructure without breaking the bank. And a lot of it was about how to manage a budget as a mid-level IT manager.
That's some helpful skills right there.
And then tomorrow I've got a session. It's called Long Live the Server GUI, which is kind of a bait and switch because it's about you should run your servers on core and run your GUI on your desktop. So there's a lot of PowerShell behind that.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem with server core is a lot of people get afraid because they're like, I don't know PowerShell. Well, you can do the GUI for the things that you need the GUI for.
Yeah.
Just run the GUI on your desktop. And so it talks about that. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Azure Arc and some things like that.
Nice. Azure Arc is an exciting space
It is.
And so those are some great topics. I like the variety of content. I have also noticed a lot of PowerShell talks, which I attended today. It's cool to see a lot of the PowerShell teams out here. I mean, it's at Microsoft campus, so
absolutely
not too long of a trip for them.
Right.
But it's been a great time, man.
Absolutely. I'm glad you got to come.
Dude,
it's been a hoot.
I hit you up on LinkedIn. You said, hey, come to TechMentor. I was like, I'm going to be there and I'm going to see you.
Yes.
And now we're here at dinner, man. Drinks are flowing. Food
Absolutely.
came out. And you're willing to just smell the fries in front of you.
Yes,
and not
yes.
indulge for
Yes.
the PowerShell community.
I'm not even smacking into the mic.
You're not. You are in engagement mode. So circling back to PowerShell Summit, what was your talk about then?
I didn't speak at Summit.
Oh,
I was an attendee.
Oh, you were full attendee. I don't know.
I was straight on attendee.
You got speaker energy, man. I learned from you at the conference in the bar talks. So.
It's one of those things where I've known enough of the people that were speaking at Summit that I hang out with the speakers. It's like, I work the speaker vibe even if I'm not getting the speaker pay.
There you go. It's big speaker energy.
Right on.
That. Well, awesome, man. So give us a little bit of history about you, because it sounds like you've been in this PowerShell world, in this space for quite a while. So can you give us a little bit of a rundown on your little history?
Actually, I got started in PowerShell kind of late, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I started in IT back in the late 90s. I started off as an AS400 programmer. And then when kind of the internet started happening in the late 90s, I was kind of on the forefront of that from a hobbyist standpoint. And the rest of our IT team were like, they were mainframe guys,
Yep.
And so I knew how IP worked and things like that. So I kind of fell into the infrastructure role. And then I was working in a small company, and there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities for automation or anything like that. And then it wasn't until PowerShell 3 had just come out. And I had been kind of watching it, but I was like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of like VB script. Yeah. I've got 4 servers. I don't know that I need this. Right. And then at the same time, the company had a growth explosion and we were building out more VMs. I went to Tech Ed. I saw Don Jones.
I heard of
give
him.
one of his, so how's this PowerShell thing working about for you? Kind of conversations, right? And I was sitting way in the back. I'll never forget. I was sitting way in the back, and I'm like, this guy looks like Tony Stark, right? But all the stuff he said was like, wow, I could do that. And, you go to a conference and you walk in with the idea of like, okay, I'm going to go learn more about X thing, right? That's what I'm here for. And at that conference, I went to go learn more about Exchange. I wanted to learn more about how to be better at Exchange, right? Yep. I totally switched. I was like the second day of the conference, and then I was all PowerShell all the time. And I went back to work, and I'm like, we're going to automate everything. And things kind of took off for me after that. My career kind of took off. Yep. I got better roles, management roles, more money, all this kind of stuff.
We like that.
You learn PowerShell, you make more money.
Yep. I heard Jason Helmick today talk about the PowerShell. Gosh, what is it? Golden vow. If you learn PowerShell, they'll do everything they can to make it the best decision you've ever made.
Absolutely.
Something to that effect.
Absolutely.
And I love meeting people who are at your stage where they've experienced that success. They know it.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of people around us who are just kind of dabbling in the waters. Should I take this risk? Should I go on this journey?
Oh, absolutely.
Although
I do have a cautionary tale.
Okay.
A cautionary tale for those of you, those people, your listeners who are beginning PowerShell. Do not tell the executive secretary that you can replace her with 100 lines of code. HR frowns on that. I found that out the hard way. Even though it was true, I was still told I should not tell coworkers that I can replace them with a few hundred lines of code.
That is sage advice. So we'll learn from that experience and pass it on to the next generation. Awesome. Well, so I haven't told everyone who we're going to interview tonight. And I'm not going to. Actually, wait, they're going to read the title. Dang it. They'll know. Well, I'll just say this for those of you who haven't cheated and looked ahead. We have a very special birthday boy here tonight who we'll be interviewing last, and we will be celebrating him thusly. And you know what? We might even promo a book or two. Let's get some more people into PowerShell, reading some good PowerShell in a month of lunches.
Right on.
But we have our good friend Mike Nelson here, just diving into some breakfast. We're having no, take your time, dude. Take your time. We're having 7:23 p.m. breakfast together at what's it called? 13 Coins.
13 Coins.
It's an awesome establishment. It is our second night here. The food is good, reasonably priced, great vibe. They have these leather chairs that look like thrones that you can sit in if you want to sit at the bar.
13 Coins is the unofficial home of TechMentor speakers.
Is it?
I have learned so much in this bar over the years as an attendee. I've come in so many times. Dude, your session. Let me buy you a drink and pick your brain. I have some more questions.
That's great advice. If you're attending a conference, First of all, you really should find some communities, some events. If you don't have a travel budget, find something in your area community oriented. But if you can attend conferences, have communications. Get outside of your comfort zone. Meet some new people. And for many people who get a lot of value out of conferences, a lot of the value comes from those conversations in the hallway and after.
Absolutely. The bar and hallway sessions are almost as valuable as the actual sit in a room sessions.
Yep. Getting like-minded people together who have similar experiences. Some people have seen problems and not solved it. And then you run into somebody who has solved it. That same problem. It's a good time, man. It gets me fired up being at these conferences. But let's pass the mic to my dear friend, and I'm sitting on the cable. Good friend. I think we met at PowerShell Summit.
Yeah.
That would be it.
Yeah.
We almost caught him at MMS when we did the MMS episodes.
That's right.
He was a busy guy.
That's right. Yeah. MMS was crazy. That was my first MMS. So that was really a little bit of a shock.
It was mine too.
Was it really?
Yes, it was my first MMS.
Okay.
It was fun. They the nights were later at that conference.
They were later, and there was so much activity. I mean, it literally, you were always doing something. And as it's different there because, and I don't know if this is something you want to get into too much, but if we're talking about conferences in comparison, like what TechMentor we're at today and MMS, you're actually, when you speak at MMS, you're actually paired up with someone that you've never spoken with before. So you actually get paired up with someone that you don't even know, that you may not know, or maybe you do know. But the two gentlemen that I got paired up with, I'd never met before. And trying to coordinate with them, and, because it's a requirement that both of you do the session.
Yeah.
And one of them was on PowerShell using actually ChatGPT and Copilot with PowerShell. And then the other one was also around automation with Azure and using Azure Cloud Shell with the portal and PowerShell and all the other tool sets you get in there. So it was really unique, whereas like TechMentor here, you're just a single speaker, you have your own sessions, so it was cool to experience. It was.
It is definitely different with that type of session. I think it can lead to some interesting results.
Yeah.
But if you want to get a taste of that conference, just a little snippet here and there, check out our bar episodes from that conference. I'll put the link in the show notes. Give you a click away. You want to ride the conference vibe. You like the after hours conversation. You can find us there. But Mike, I want to hear a little bit about your history because I've known you for a while. You've done quite a bit with your career. You've helped a lot of people. I noticed that you're very kind towards others, which I've seen conference over conference. A lot of people go to Mike with questions. Yeah. You got answers. So what's your career been like?
So I actually started out, I wasn't in IT. I became an IT person by accident, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Actually by necessity, because my boss needed someone to figure out how to fix a Novell network. All right. So I was actually, and believe this or not, I started out after high school and started into college, and I had a part-time job as a printing press operator. So I would run actually 2 and 4 color presses, and I would, do printing. But one of the bosses there knew that I had my first Atari XL computer, and I was like always asking people if I could use their computers at the company. So he was like, hey, do you know anything about this network thing? Because we pay this other company a lot of money to come in and fix our Novell networks. I'm like, no, but I'm willing to learn. And he's like, well, learn as much as you can, and you can help out with it. And there it just took off. It just took off from there. My whole career started out again working for a contractor called Microwave that would go out and fix like printers and do all that kind of stuff. The people that wore the actual like shirts, that you would uniform shirts with your name on them, and stuff like that, and you'd go out and fix stuff for people. And then it got into infrastructure. I became an engineer. Got up into the architecture role, and then I've just taken it from there. I'm actually kind of switched over a little bit more towards the community side in the last 10, 12 years. And really do more of the evangelism, as I call it, working with community, and trying to get all this stuff that's in my head, and hopefully explain it well enough for other people to understand and let them learn as well, because I'm always learning from them. And PowerShell was just a part of it in infrastructure, but it's kind of taken over for me, So my primary focus today is all APIs, SDKs, PowerShell, automation, you name it. That's where I'm at.
Nice. Very cool. I'm also very community oriented, and it's cool to see. Here's a tough question for a bar session episode. How do you balance?
Wait, I need another drink.
Right? How do you navigate the space of community when you work for a company? Because I'm in the same spot.
Yeah.
For me, I really just try and help others. Sometimes that'll be solutions that we offer. Sometimes it won't. PowerShell's free to everybody. I help people in that way a lot.
Right.
That's kind of my general approach, but can you give me some insights?
So I worked corporate IT for a Fortune 100 company at the time that I first started with community. And it was really hard because at the time, it was like they didn't understand what I was trying to do. And I just wanted to get a speaking session at this conference. It used to be held in Chicago. It was called Forum. It was done by Brian Madden, who was big in the EUC space, and it was all about Citrix and all about, remote desktops and things like that. So I wanted to break through into that. I was like, I want to try this. But from there, it just kind of, going from corporate IT and then going into a consulting role, it was a lot easier because really a consulting role, had more freedom to do things. And it wasn't really that restrictive, like, hey, you've got to get your work done and then you can go do this community stuff kind of, thing. Going into different roles, I've always had to be careful about how much community I put into it compared to getting my work done. But I've also pushed people to understand that community is incredibly important. So I had a boss that, that really kind of triggered me. I worked for a company that was, at the time, it was owned by another company. It was called Cloud Jumper. And they actually, were like, you know what? You can do this community stuff. It's important. Our customers think it's really important, so you need to do this. And ever since then, every time that I've ever taken another position or I've interviewed for a position, I've always made that a point. I've always said, will you allow me to be involved in the community? And what I mean by involved is being a part of it and contributing to it, committing to it.
Yep.
And every employer, I asked that of every employer. And if I had a couple that would just say, well, you gotta meet this goal or you have to get this done. And I'm like, if this is going to be a deal breaker, then it's going to be a deal breaker because I have to do this. So
I think as time goes on, more and more business leaders are seeing the value in community.
Right.
And it helps to work for an org where not everything has to lead back to sales. It's okay to just do genuinely good stuff just to help.
Yep.
Usually doing that works out in your favor long term, but you can't be too worried about connecting those dots. Like, it'll happen.
Exactly. And it kind of depends on who you work for too, because if you're working for someone who's really trying to sell a product, as compared to being in corporate IT, because in corporate IT, they just want you to get the work done.
Yep.
And they want you to help the business. Whereas with, selling something, you got to get out there and you got to convince people to buy stuff, or you got to be their trusted advisor, so. Yeah.
Yep. Fun space, though. And I'll say to anyone out there, one thing I heard today mentioned a couple times was get involved in the community. And if you're listening to this right now, I highly recommend finding a community. If PowerShell Podcast, get involved in the PowerShell community, connect with people. There are many like-minded individuals like Mike and I who love community, who love contributing towards others. And ultimately, I kind of geek out at the thought of I can do as much contributions as one person can make, but if I can help someone else increase what they can do, that's where the geeky automation force multiplier side of things gets involved, and I love it.
I think that's kind of evolved for me, actually, because early on when I was getting involved, I was like, I gotta I put goals for myself saying, I've got to do this many blogs, or I've got to do this many videos. I've got to try and get on this many webinars or this many call for papers. Now it's more like, these are important things for me to do, but it's not so many. It's not the quantity, it's more around, can I help someone else do it too? Because there are other people that reach out and say, hey, I've always wanted to do this, but number one, I don't do well speaking in front of people, or number two, I'm not sure that people really are going to look at me and say, well, you know what you're talking about, so I'm going to listen to you. Having some imposter syndrome going on there, and I totally get it because I've gone through it. I've had imposter syndrome probably half a dozen times during my career, and that's being conservative. I've probably had it more than that. And it's just because you run into some people that you see at conferences and you just watch videos of, and they're impressive as hell. I mean, You look at them going, holy crap, I could never do that, and it scares you a little bit. It sets you back.
It definitely does. And it's cool to see people on that journey. I think we started this podcast a couple years ago. And in that time, a lot of our audience has kind of seen me deal with that in different ways. And over time, I'm really comfortable with understanding that everyone's a person. I've made a lot of progress on my imposter syndrome, not because my confidence has increased, but just because I'm a little bit more realistic. I'm a little bit more understanding.
Right.
I've made mistakes on the podcast. Oh gosh, who's counting?
You've matured. You've learned.
That's part of it.
Right. Yeah,
but if I didn't take that chance and put myself out there, that wouldn't have happened. And that's not saying everybody has to do a podcast, but you got to find your opportunities to contribute. Try and speak, start a user group, your workplace, or at the very least your area that you work in. Maybe write a blog. Just take whatever step feels uncomfortable but still possibly doable. Do it and keep growing, and you can have an amazing journey ahead of you, and your career can be far more, at least for me, than I ever thought would be possible from a career.
Yeah, I am originally one of the bosses that was really involved with community. He had told me, he said, I want you to do something that makes you uncomfortable, and I want you to do it because you gain more confidence. Even though it might go really bad, it might be like totally fall apart and it's a disaster, but you learn from it and you actually build your confidence that way.
Yep.
I'll be totally transparent. I wouldn't believe if I was telling you this 20 years ago, I would not believe anything I'm saying right now.
Yep.
Okay. But again, through time you learn, and it comes to you. It does. It might take a little bit, but it'll come to you.
Yep. And you know what? You won't be alone on that journey of growth. Like, there's a lot of people out there who are at different stages of that. And it's very cool to see. And doing that kind of thing ultimately leads to more money too. But to me, that is not the most exciting part.
No.
It is just in this career, you can have connections with people and an impact on people, and you can really have an impact on the world.
Yeah.
And it's more than just computers.
I hate talking to the point of my wife gives me crap about this all the time, is I don't like to talk about myself. Mm-hmm. I'm a very humble person. I don't like to, I get the MVP award. I'm not one of the people that goes out there right away and says, hey, I got the MVP award, I'm all great and everything else. No, I don't do that, right? One of the things that I've always had a real problem with is people will come to me and say, you really done a great job. You really did this. And I'm like, it was, in my head, I thank you very much. But in my head, I'm thinking I did a mediocre job. I really wish I could have done better. And to me, that's something I've always had to deal with, is trying to figure that out. But it never really led me to think that, hey, I could make more money because of this. That wasn't in my head. It came with it, but it really wasn't something that was a goal. I guess in life, it's always a goal to make more money, but it wasn't something that, was in the forefront.
Yep.
And I always had a problem with the last three jobs that I've had. I did a lot of bouncing. Okay. And that was during the time when people bounced between jobs quite a bit. But I did not have an interview for 3 of the jobs that I took. I got offered them with no interview. And the reason was because I knew these people. I had worked with them in the community. They came to me and said, I know you, I trust you, okay, and I know you can do this. So will you work for me? Kind of a deal. And my wife was just amazed by that. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's no big deal. It's like they need somebody to do this and I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
I didn't, and she finally made me realize that, hey, that was kind of a big deal, but to this day, if you were to ask me, I wouldn't tell you that. This is actually the first time that I've ever talked about this.
Hey, we got you feeling comfortable?
This is the first time I've ever, believe it or not, first time.
The Grey Goose got you loose?
Yeah, it's. I think it's a drink. I think it's the vodka.
Dude, you're spitting facts, though. I mean, that is very true stuff that you're dropping there. Whenever you're doing the right things, right, it's going to benefit others around you. It's going to benefit you financially. It's going to make you feel good as a person when you're doing good things, lead to growth. It's a fun journey, man. And it's cool to see there's many people who are kind of more and more people are starting to see the light.
Yeah, and this guy, the birthday boy, who's sitting next to me,
who
the
is
birthday
he?
boy that we're going to be talking to here. He is a guy that I looked up to. I was like, I never met James before the summit thing, right? But I had heard him. I had heard him speak, and I was like, I'd really like to meet this guy someday. And sure enough, now look at us.
Dude, now we're celebrating his birthday with
now
him?
we're celebrating his birthday together. So I'll let you talk to him for a little bit.
Right. And that's right. If you didn't guess it, if you didn't read ahead, we got James Petty. We will refer to him thusly as Birthday Boy.
If you must.
Welcome to the podcast, man. Great to see you. The chairman. Oh, yes, the chairman. Welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be back.
Recurring guests.
4 times, I think.
I'm not keeping track, but you are, and so is Stephen Judd.
Well, I am, and I think I'm one ahead of Stephen.
Good. Well, keep your lead. He was the first PowerShell podcast MVP. So there you go, Stephen Judd. You got one victory over him so far. But it's great to see you here, man. We're in Seattle, same area. Dude, Judd is hyped. He's a competitive guy. Shout out, Judd. I want to say, while we're on the topic of Judd, how did you make your way into this episode? Get out of here. But I will say, Jason Helmick gave a talk with James Petty today, and you know what he was wearing?
A Stephen Judd
A
shirt.
Stephen Judd shirt.
Actually,
so shout out.
Fun fact, 2 people came up after the presentation, and they wanted to know where they got that shirt, or where Jason got
You got
the
to
shirt.
know a guy.
I was like, you gotta go find Stephen Judd, and you gotta find out where he's speaking at. I'm like, and he might bring one for you.
I bet if you message him nicely, he will. It's always good to reach out to the people who you look up to or learn a thing or two from or admire their work. It's a great first step at engaging in the community. But James, busy guy, man. You were talking today. 2, and I saw them both with my very own eyes.
Yeah.
I took photos.
Awesome. Yeah, so 2 sessions today, and I've got 2 tomorrow.
Oh, gosh.
So,
Busy guy.
Busy week.
What were the sessions on today?
So this morning we co-presented with Jason Helmick, and we did a brief history of PowerShell. We started with Monad Manifesto, so Monad being the pre-release version of PowerShell. So we went to Monad, then we went to V1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We stopped at 6 because the PowerShell team had a whole session on PowerShell 7, so we didn't have to talk about that. And I talked a little bit about some of the, kind of breezed over some of the security things, and talked about the community for a little bit. And then this afternoon we had just an open panel discussion. It was just an open Q&A with the people in the room. We had some great questions, and no slides, no demos, just kind of a campfire type setting, and it was fantastic.
I was there, and so was Mike Nelson, where he surprised me. I had no clue who was going to be at this event. I heard a voice that I sort of recognized, but it was too far behind me, so I'd have to crane my neck, so I didn't look. And then he asked a question, and I got to see him, and I was like, Mike, you sneaky son of a gun, you snuck in.
Greg skipped out on us. Like, he wasn't there.
I was presenting.
He was presenting.
He was presenting,
Busy guy.
okay. I guess that's an acceptable reason.
I was your competition.
Yep. But great sessions. I'll be honest, I did not look at all the sessions beforehand, but whenever I got there today, set up the booth, was chilling, I looked at the little list of sessions, and I was like, PowerShell. Oh my gosh. PowerShell's pretty well represented.
This conference this year is very PowerShell heavy. The first time, I think Greg said 3 or 4, pre-COVID, right?
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, he's shaking his head yes. You can't see it. but not, they've always had PowerShell sessions, but this year, I said I know I have 4 sessions. Jason had another session. Mike's got an all-day workshop. Mike's got 4 sessions as well. Just the amount of PowerShell sessions this year is just great. And actually, so one of the questions in our panel we had today was, where do you see PowerShell moving in the future? And I think that in itself explains it. Like it is not going away. It just train lets the station and it keeps going, and it's going and it's going, and no end in sight.
That's right. And it always gets me fired up when I get to see people at the beginning start of that PowerShell journey. And there are many people who I've talked to who are like, haven't started in PowerShell at all, and they're getting started. They were in the PowerShell session asking questions. How should I get started? And one tip that I got today from Mike Nelson, I've heard it before, but it was reiterated to me how important it is using ChatGPT or some AI to decipher a script. Say you're new to PowerShell, but there are some scripts online that do exactly what you're trying to do, but you don't know enough PowerShell to feel confident in actually running it in your environment. Test environment's fantastic, but also ChatGPT, explain to me how this script works line by line. Fantastic use, fantastic aid in programming, especially with PowerShell. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Copilot on Windows does the same thing. You know, or of course, you can use Claude, Bart, Gemini. They all do the same thing.
Yep. And just kind of decipher things for you. Can be very helpful. But I will say, once you know PowerShell, you can use that same AI technology to convert things from one language to another and kind of get started using different languages. What are your sessions on tomorrow?
They're both on PowerShell security. So I have a fast focus session. So that's a 25-minute session, maybe 20. I don't remember. On using SSH for PowerShell remoting.
Nice, great topic.
For those who haven't heard, WinRM is, I can't say deprecated because that has different meanings in Microsoft talk, but it is no longer being developed. So SSH is the way of the future. So that's how we need to start working on that. So, Microsoft implementation of OpenSSH. So we're going to talk about how to set that up for PowerShell remoting, and then I have a 75-minute session on PowerShell security and best practices. Go over quite a few topics: execution policy, script signing, and then we'll talk a little bit about GIA.
Nice
as well.
That's a topic that's near and dear to my heart because it needs so much attention. I was talking to a friend recently, and I definitely need to be beating that hammer a little bit harder, getting more people to understand, making things a little bit more digestible for them, because PowerShell has so many great security features that people just aren't using. They're there for you, and you shouldn't enable them after you need the logging enabled. You should enable it before you need the logging and the transcription and all those great features that are available for you.
And I'm finally going to make Sean happy. We're going to talk about module transcription. Every time I give him this talk, he always pings me and says, "You forgot to talk about this." I'm like, John Wheeler. I'm like, well, so Sean, just for you, we're talking about module transcription tomorrow. I'm sure you'll listen.
Yes, I will be there. Of course. Now that you guilted me into it, I'll be there.
Well, I was talking about Sean listening to the podcast.
Oh, Sean. Yes. Hello, Sean.
Yeah,
Thanks
there'll
for
at least
listening.
be one person in my session, so that's good.
Yes, I will be there.
Actually, there are quite a few people here this week that are like, I'm only going to PowerShell sessions. And sure enough, like I've seen the same faces.
Dude,
It's fantastic.
If you're listening to this and you heard me mention that, hey, we're going to have a TechMentor episode coming out on Monday, I want to say shout out to you. It was great meeting you, whoever you are. I've met so many awesome people at this conference. Kind of one of the highlights for me. People at all different stages of things. So shout out to you if you're listening.
Oh, and a shout out to his worker, Brittany.
Shout out, Brittany.
Very much, for allowing your boss to interview us. We really appreciate that.
I am not Brittany's boss. But yeah, shout out Brittany for putting this all together and allowing me to be here with these great people at this great conference. It is a good time. James, people like reading. People like learning PowerShell. Are there any books that they could learn to get started with PowerShell? And maybe say they're already started, but they want to get into scripting. Is there any book? I don't know if you've written anything. I mean,
So there are 2 books to come to mind.
oh, go on.
Imagine that 2 books.
What a lead-in. Come on.
So we have Learn PowerShell in a month of lunches, and then Learn PowerShell scripting in a month of lunches, both by Manning. You definitely find those. I'll give Andrew the link for the show notes. Be a discount code. It's good until sometime in September. We'll get the exact date, but you'll be able to get 45% off using the discount link in the show notes.
What? Oh my gosh.
Right. Thanks to Manning.
Thanks to Manning. Thanks to James. And thanks to all of our awesome listeners. This has been a bar session. We have a bunch of food here. I'm actually kind of hungry, and this chicken Caesar salad is looking at me. Yeah, it's a little
Andrew
cold.
sat here and talked to everyone while all of us ate and have taken our plates away. And Andrew's salad, yes, I said salad, but don't forget the chicken wings and the Brussels sprouts and the calamari he ate.
Yeah.
But his salad is still sitting here cold.
Listen, I ate a salad for dinner. I'm just going to stick with that story. Okay, audience members. But, it's another week. We got to drop an episode, man. So thank you all for allowing this to happen. I look forward to the rest of the week. This is only Tuesday night, the first non-workshop day. We got Wednesday. We got Thursday. And Mike Nelson is delivering an intro to PowerShell. Apparently 50 attendees on Friday. That is very exciting news.
Like adding a little stress to it.
Oh, yeah, just a little bit of stress. You know what? If you're out here listening, send Mike a connection request on LinkedIn and tell him he did a great job, even if you didn't go.
Come on.
Link in show notes. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mike.
I think we got to sing happy birthday. We got to sing.
Look, battery's done.
What a shame.
No, I'm not. All right, Mike, lead us off.
No. Just say happy birthday, boy.
Happy birthday, boy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great drive. Have a great walk. Whatever you're doing, I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.